Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, ObjectivelyDan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk about what people believe and why. And every single week, I have a special guest. This week is no different. It is Cynthia McDonald. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. So we were talking about how to introduce you during the show, and we both mutually agreed that I should start with the phrase, Cynthia, how would you like to introduce yourself? So this is me giving that phrase to you now, Cynthia. Go ahead.
Okay, and then I'm supposed to run with it from here.
You're supposed to run with it from here, right? Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, you said my name already, so
That's correct.
Okay, so we got that out the way. All
right? I can say it again if you'd like. This is Cynthia McDonald, folks. Cynthia, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to be here. And a little bit about me. I am an infectious disease medical case manager in the city of Wind. Specifically, the infectious disease is HIV. I also am a nonprofit, a show that is produced by the Atheist community of Austin every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
That's right.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And we'll be plugging that again at the end of the show too. But yes, another one of our fantastic programs here, the nonprofits, which you were on the most recent episode of. So you guys should definitely check it out when it comes out.
Yes, please. Should I say more things?
Okay. Yeah, you should say more things.
Okay, I'm going to say more things. I am also a blogger. I write a blog called I write a blog, freedmenhealthandwellness.com. That's what it's called, freedmenhealthandwellness.com.
Okay.
It is a blog that talks about the social determinants of health from people who mainly descend from United States chattel slavery. So I talk a lot about that, and I wrote a lot about COVID. A whole lot about COVID.
I'm sure you have. And I'm sure you'll have to be writing more, unfortunately, the way things look like they are turning out. So
Indeed. Yes.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, Cynthia, do you believe in God?
No.
Okay. So were you aware that there was a global you identify as an atheist then?
I
right?
do.
Maybe under that label, because there was a global prayer to end atheism this past week. Have you seen this going around?
I saw some utterances floating around the internet sphere of said thing, mostly counter memes by other atheists about the ending of atheism through prayer. I wonder, how's that working out?
So it's supposed to have happened yesterday, and last time I checked, I'm still here. The ACA is still here, and you're still here. So I think we're okay. But there was a Facebook group called Say No to Atheism that basically made out a post wanting to incite a global day of prayer to end atheism. And the last thing that they posted about it was that the atheists are praying back, so that we need to they need to pray harder. And I'm still not sure. I've only briefly looked into this page. I don't know if they're trolling or not. If they are, then that's great. But whether they are or aren't, there's definitely people out there who believe that their collective prayers are going to I don't know. What is the intention there? Does the ending atheism mean we just all become Christians, or do we like get zapped away like Thanos style? Like what do you think the end goal is there? Because I don't
Like
know.
all the Infinity Stones get together, and then
right.
it waves, and then all of a sudden the atheists just completely
We're just all
disappear.
done. It's like the rapture, except it's atheists only. That's what I'm thinking.
Right, and we just go into nothingness. Is that almost like nihilism? Almost kind of
Yes.
like
I think so. It's like it's a dramatic irony, right? We end up turning to nothingness because we believe in nothing, right? That's
exactly.
That's what it is.
Or salt, maybe, just maybe, Dan.
Salt.
We all turn into pillars of salt. I mean,
we're a pretty salty community. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt that we all turn into pillars of salt. That would be a good one.
But we're savory. We are savory.
Yes, that's true. We're bad for your cholesterol, but there's some benefits there. So okay. It didn't work. I don't know if it's real or not. If you were a part of that prayer, I'd love you to call in and ask us what was the intention there. Because folks, we have open lines right now. We'd love to talk to any of you guys who want to come talk to us about Bigfoot, God, aliens, you name it. Medical stuff today too. We do have a medical expert, someone who has a discipline in the field of medicine, one which I do not and cannot speak of any relevancy to. So that's kind of cool. So definitely call in about that if you can. The other thing I wanted to bring up today, Cynthia, was today was supposed to be another prediction was supposed to be happening. Basically, the QAnon folks and other folks who were in those kind of circles were talking about the former president coming back up as president again, former President Trump becoming president again. That was supposed to happen today. Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, the pillow manufacturer guy.
I've heard about Pillow Man. Yes.
This is the world that we live in now. That pillow, shall we say, pillow moguls was what I was going. Pillow moguls are now telling us what the future of our democracy holds in this country on weird news channels. Like that's the thing that's happening, and this is the world that we're living in. And Trump was supposed to come back today, and that didn't happen. So,
well, I'm wondering if it's a pillow Mongol. Can we call him Genghis Pillow or Pillow Khan?
Pillow Khan would be good. Yeah, that's a misspell. I hope that doesn't go in the clips for the advertisements next week, because that would be really bad. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it's probably going to. So Mike Lindell is a very strange man, and they did this. I don't know if you've seen what happened here. He was supposed to do this live presentation also on how the election was stolen and how it was completely a fraud. And they were like, the whole live stream was him trying to open up like computer files. Like they didn't actually really show anything. It's really bizarre. We're living in a bizarre world now, and I'm still figuring out how to cope with that. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I was having a conversation with my partner about how bizarre the world is. Because one of the things that, like, on Sunday we're going to be talking about is vaccines, like specifically the COVID-19 vaccine. And my partner is a boomer. And he
do you mean that in the generational sense or in the internet speak sense?
No, in the generational sense.
Okay,
however, sometimes when we have conversations, I'm like, okay, boomer. But anyway,
this is the whole thing, because people don't get this. Boomer is a mentality, right? I'm not talking about how old you are. If I'm calling you a boomer, that just means you're saying something that's kind of a boomer thing to say. That's all that means. I get a lot of pushback on that in comments from some of my older audiences that watch me. And older audiences that love me, I love all of you. Just you can't say boomer things. There are boomer things that you can say that you shouldn't say. So that's all I mean about that.
Yeah, the more problematic boomer-isms that might fall out of one's mouth, you should not say that. But one of the things that we were talking about specifically is that he would talk about how when he was in school, how they would line the children up for polio vaccines. And no one ever questioned getting their vaccines. Like they had sent a letter home to the parents, and the parents said, "Hey, guess what? Your kid's about to get, the jab in the arm." And
Right.
their parents was like, "Okay," got their kid to said place, to the school, and to make sure that they got their inoculation. And no one ever questioned, should they do it, or even came up with these weird, twisted explanations of all the adverse things that could happen to one if they got the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really kind of wacky that this is the times that we're living in,
Mhm.
where, I think that it is aptly proven that COVID-19 exists.
Right.
And also, I believe that it's aptly proven that people have died from it.
Yes.
And now we have a vaccine. We have several different vaccines now,
Mhm.
that one can get in order to help prevent them from getting COVID, or if they happen to get it, that is going to give them a better defense
Mm.
against it after infection, because breakthrough infections are real.
Right.
Yeah, but like all these different things that people have said, again, on the Twitters and the YouTubies and all these
Mhm.
other places
Right.
about, it's just wacky.
It is wacky. It's interesting because, and I'm sure you know this too, like, anti-vax rhetoric has been around, and it has been around for a while.
Sure.
It's not a brand new thing. I think what we're seeing now in the culture, obviously, is a resurgence in its mainstream popularity.
Mm,
Probably part of because of the internet, because so many people are getting more of their information that way than they used to.
mm,
Because it used to be just not as big a thing. I mean, you can find anti-vax cartoons like 100 years old, of people, like political cartoons of people being critical of the science behind the inoculation process and what that looks like and stuff. I think we're seeing a difference, and everybody has their takes, right? Everybody's speculating. I think one of the things is, like, we've gone through a generation of people who have grown up, who have gotten it in schools, who didn't realize that they had it, or didn't realize the effects of it, and didn't realize, like I grew up at a time where polio was already not a thing I had to worry about really in
correct.
my daily life. So, like, that's my generation, and those around me don't see the real harm of that. And like polio also, the effects of the disease is very dramatic, right? At worst, you can get lifelong paralysis and other kinds of complications that the COVID also can give you complications for. But like at first, when COVID was first on the scene, we were first hearing things, we weren't hearing those stories. Like, those
Mhm.
stories weren't out yet. So a big narrative at the time, and I'm sure you remember this too last year, was people saying, "Oh, this is just another flu. Like, we
Right.
don't have to worry about it." So people were already kind of downplaying it. So there's a lot of complicated factors here that I'm sure public health communication specialists are really looking at and really seeing how we can do better on. Because I wish the country was more vaccinated as it is. I wish the state of Texas was more vaccinated as it is. We are now probably going to become the second Florida here,
Oh dear.
in terms of number of cases again, as I've been tracking the stats on it. But yeah, it's really bad. It's really awful. So vaccines are real. The Pfizer vaccine and all the other ones are real. You guys should go get it if you haven't already. And I would say, yeah, you can stop watching the show and go get yourself an appointment to do that. I'm okay with that. Go get your
I
vaccines, people.
I am as well. Yeah, just
Yeah,
stop. You don't have to look at us. Just go. How about that?
listen to it. How about
Bye.
that? Absolutely.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm sure it's been frustrating for you too, as somebody who's been chronicling this and who's been writing about this. I mean, what are your observations on how we can communicate about the efficacy of the vaccine to people?
I've been kind of like, you wheel head turning about, what could be better. Like, how
Yeah.
can we uh put it into a way that is more digestible for people, so that they would be more on the side of getting vaccinated per se. And the only thing I can think of is to shoot everybody who says otherwise. No, no, kidding,
Mhm.
kidding. But what I, but I think that what is necessary is really pushing education on this
Mm,
on this topic. Like,
mm,
now I will say that other communities have been really good about galvanizing their people in order to help get them vaccinated. In the beginning of the year, all the way up until June, I was working immunization relays here in the city, and the two communities that were really getting like their people together and also making sure that they get vaccinated are the African American community and also the Latinx community. It
mm,
was even one event that we did where a whole busload of people came. They were coming specifically from a community center that was primarily in a Latinx community.
mhm,
And so they have been really good about going into any place that, people will gather to actually, talk about, the vaccine and why it's important to get, and even like, helping schedule appointments. Um, and matter of fact, one of the other immunization relays that I worked at, we were at a nightclub, and it was a nightclub that was traditionally for drag queens. It was great. And
oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, very cool. But that was primarily in the Latinx community, and
Mm,
so myself and some other of the workers, we all left the actual venue that we were at and went into different restaurants all up and down the street. Like, hey, did you get vaccinated? You can come right now, and we were able to actually pull people.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think that it takes more people to be dedicated in order to say, like, hey, you know, we generally care about, humanity and being
Hmm.
safe as possible. And if there is something that's out there that they can get for little to nothing out of their pocket, and oftentimes like the
Hmm.
vaccines are offered to people for free,
Yeah.
then let's go ahead and do it. And so like that's been like the general idea. I just wish
It,
that like more people would actually adopt that idea.
isn't it awful though? Because I feel like people are taking the fact that this vaccine is free even as even more evidence that this is all some grand plan to stop people, right? Because like I I have family members who work in healthcare, and one of them is a manager of a team. And this past week, this person has told me that their healthcare company has recently made a policy that everybody has to be vaccinated. Right?
Mm,
You'd think that everybody who's working in that industry would already want to be vaccinated if they're not already, but they have different priority levels for which people and staff get it and stuff. Right?
mhm.
So two of the people that are on her team, who are both nurses, are quitting because they refuse to get the vaccine. And so, like, that's like, this wasn't like I said, anti-vax things like have been around, but not like nurses quitting on whole teams and stuff, right? And like, this isn't the first story where I'm sure you've heard of this happening. I'm sure you've heard of
No.
other people. I've definitely seen other people talk about people who work in health, specifically nurses in particular. I've heard a lot of people just refusing just the science on this and stuff. And it's a weird corruption of our trust in the institution of science and our trust in especially just our medical institutions as a whole. People already have a lot of problems with the American healthcare system. This is just
Right.
not helping in that
No, it's
regard.
not. No,
But,
it's not.
like I this has been an ongoing trend. I feel like this is like reflective of a bigger symptom, right?
And see, here's the thing also with the whole issue with healthcare workers.
Mm-hmm.
You do have more people who are employed in the medical industry that
Mm-hmm.
are speaking out against it,
Right.
and they're using their positions to argue authority in
Yeah.
order to dissuade people from getting the vaccine. Um, I even remember like when the pandemic was really, getting at a high point last year. I wish I could remember this guy's name. I think it's Dr. Shiva, the person who claimed that he invented email.
Dr. Shiva.
I
I'm
think
not
that's
sure.
his name.
You're not talking about Al Gore, are you? Because Al Gore
Yeah.
invented the internet.
No, he invented
So,
the internet. This
right.
person said that he invented email.
Okay.
But I do believe it's Dr. Shiva. If somebody can correct me, I would appreciate it. Hey,
That
call
sounds
in. How about
familiar.
that?
That's right. Call in and we can talk about it, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But I remember listening to him being interviewed on one of these obscure YouTube channel news-esque shows.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he said is, and I'm paraphrasing, that HIV is not really deadly. It's not something that can cause one to, lose their life or, something to that effect, because he was trying to compare the COVID-19 virus as, pretty much benign like
Yeah.
HIV. And I
Yeah.
was like, no.
You're like the
No.
one person where you can't talk to about that, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I was like, no, that is exactly no, you are so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. Like,
Mhm.
we have too many people, or I would say too many people with doctor or other credentials in front of or behind their names that
Mhm.
are being loud and wrong
Right.
in
I
these
agree.
spaces.
I agree. And that's obviously not just a US thing, but we do see it in the US, and we do see it like, look, if your chiropractor is telling you not to get the vaccine, don't listen to your chiropractor.
No.
Right? Like I that kind of stuff makes you mad. A lot of the naturopaths out there are saying the same kinds of things. It's almost like it's trendy. It's almost like it's just trendy. I wonder if people would lose clout in their individual communities if they supported the vaccine. I genuinely think that's got to be part of it, right?
Right. I mean, because
Yeah.
okay, so here's the thing, people. I have crystals, but they're pretty, right? But they're not going to heal me from anything. All
Yeah,
right.
right. Yeah, yeah. Your crystal salt lamps are not going to give you negative ions.
No.
Okay, that's just not.
No.
They look cool though. I will say that they look cool, but
Right. I mean, like, I have a salt lamp that when I turn off all the lights in my room and I just turn that off, it reflects like really cool off my walls and whatnot. So they look cool and they're cool to look at.
Yeah.
But they cure nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
It's weird that, and I want to talk about this later if we have time, because I think we should get to some calls now. But there is an interesting history of HIV denialism as its own unique movement that I wanted to kind of talk to you about too. But we're about at that time where we should get to some calls now. What do you think, Cynthia?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. But before we get to the calls, we have to give a shout out to the patron of the week. That's right, folks. Every single week we give a shout out to one of our special patrons. All of our patrons are special, but every week we like to give us a shout out to one in particular. And this week's patron of the week is Garret AJ. Thank you, Garret AJ, for donating to patreon.com/truthwanted. And thank you to everybody that donates on the Patreon. Everybody that donates eventually gets a shout out, and I appreciate everybody who does it. You guys rock, and you help make this show happen every single week. So thank you guys for doing that. And now I think it's time we should get to some calls. So we have a couple calls here in the line, and this one's kind of interesting. I don't know if I could fully answer it, but I'm willing to give it a try. This is Matthew calling in from California. Matthew, what's up?
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Doing good, Matthew. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good.
Did I ask my question?
Yeah, go for it.
So, I was thinking about, I don't know if you're familiar, there was this movie that came out in the mid-'90s starring Jodie Foster and I think Liam Neeson. It's called Nell. And I don't remember it super well, but the premise of the movie is this: they find this woman like in the woods somewhere, and like she's never been with other humans or something like that. But anyway, the movie is not really relevant. It got me thinking about the idea that, like, theoretically, what if you not just were on a stranded desert island, or not desert island, but let's say that you were on an island by yourself and you had food and comfort and you were okay, but you were by yourself and you were by yourself from birth and you somehow managed to survive. Like, what would your brain activity be like if you didn't have any language? In other
Yeah.
words, because you're always talking to your, like, I'm always talking to myself. If I'm driving the car, I'm like, well, I got to get eggs and I got to take the dogs to grooming and whatever. I'm talking to myself, you know?
Right.
But like, what if you were raised with no language? Like, how do you talk to yourself? So that's my question. And I don't have any idea.
You might not be familiar with this, but this has specifically happened. There's a couple of examples of this. The most famous example of this was a girl named Jeannie, and you can look up her story. I think there's a couple different documentaries on her, but this girl Jeannie, and she's called Jeannie because that's a protective name because her real name is kept hidden. Okay, because she was a child when all of this happened. And so, but if you look up Jeannie, so basically the story with her was she was kept in a locked room by her father for the first 13 years of her life. And during those first 13 years, basically, it was obviously a very traumatic and abusive situation, but she never went to school. She wasn't really taught real language. And so she was like these, kind of this, what you might call a feral child. I don't think that's like the correct term to use, but like she was kind of basically what you think of when you think of that, because she didn't have any real concept of language when she was 13. And so they tried to, teach her these concepts with some success. And she was able to communicate with people later on in her life after she learned a little bit about it. But where she's at today and, the full extent of her details have been kept hidden because she's been a ward of the state of, I believe, California for most of her life. But she has given some insights on what happens with people in those situations. Yeah. And basically, there's a lot of theories out there. If you look at the Whorf safer hypothesis and stuff about, how much does language actually define our reality? Can we have concepts of the world without the language to describe them? So like something I learned in my communication classes in college and content warning, this is, using language here, but the language of date rape. Okay. Date rape was the term that was a phrase that wasn't always a thing, but since it's become a thing and since that's become into the common vernacular and we've been able to report on it, there's been more cases reported of date rape happening. But there's this argument out there that says, well, in the past, before we were keeping track of this, people just didn't have that concept of calling it out. So people didn't even consider it as a thing in people's minds. So, there's a lot of debate as to how much language actually determines our worldview and stuff. And I wouldn't be able to give you an exact answer of what the true answer is right now. I don't know if anybody could, but there's a lot of research out there on it, Matthew. So it's a very fascinating topic.
Right. Yeah. That's really interesting. I didn't know about the Genie example from California.
Yes.
I'll do some research. I don't know. I should just do some research and look it up, but I thought it might be an interesting subject for the show.
Yeah, it is really fascinating because, what we have access to language helps us clearly communicate our world. But obviously, we have the problem of just being in our own heads. So we can't really examine what 5-year-olds and what 10-year-olds are really thinking in their own minds. But there's just a lot of fascinating research in linguistics and psycholinguistics that talk about this particular area of, language of philosophy here. And how we talk about it. It's a very rich and broad history that I can't talk about in a couple of minutes on a call-in show, but definitely look into that. Cynthia, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I'm nowhere near familiar with Genie, but I was just thinking about the whole thing that you brought up concerning about how much does language really delineate how we view the world around us. I would conjecture that language more so it was developed, by humans. And in actuality, like we're not the only species on the earth that communicates with one another. But I would conjecture that it was developed more so that we can communicate with one another, so that we can build communities, so that we can build societies, so that we can, learn how to work together, right? But we also use other, senses in order for us to kind of define or get some type of parameter of what our environment is. I think of like babies. I have a 2-year-old niece, and she has to touch everything. and she doesn't, and she, and like, and of course, like, especially like when she was like learning how to crawl first and then walk, we had to watch her very closely because everything went into the mouth, right? And but no one taught her how to do that. It's just like something that, you know, automatically like, oh, look, something on the floor, I'm going to put it in my mouth right now, but you know, but I would but that is a automatic response of humans in order for us to kind of learn like what is good to what is good to ingest, what is not. Okay, this doesn't taste good, it's kind of hard and I can't chew it, so maybe I should spit it out, you know. This is not going to give me nourishment, etc., etc. So, you know, so like when we, so like just like trying to like put all that together, I would, you know, say that if I could imagine like somebody like that's on like an island by themselves, but they still had like sustenance and water and they could, you know, they had like trees around with palms that they can like, you know, make some type of shelter or something. Like I would imagine like, what if more likely if they're by themselves, would language really matter? But does it really stop them from thinking? Would it stop them from trying to problem solve? Like, you know, maybe I can put together like some of these palms and twigs in order for me to make a shelter. Maybe, you know, maybe I can do all these particular things.
Here's what gets really tricky. Okay, so you're familiar with Coco the gorilla, right?
Yes.
Remember Coco the gorilla? Okay, here's my hottest take I've ever said on Truth Wanted right here, right now. Everything you know about Coco the gorilla is a lie. It's a damn lie, okay? Everything you know about Coco is a lie. So, okay, this is going to get me to a whole rant on primatology and the research there. But a lot of the studies that we see between studying language with primates, including Coco and other primates that were tested to see if they could do sign language on, were really, really bad science. Really, really bad science. There's a great video on it on YouTube that talks about, I can't remember the name off my head, but you know, there's other articles that have written about this. That whole field, you know, I remember in elementary school, they used to show us the videos of Coco talking and stuff like that. It really wasn't as plain as could be seen. There really was less of a grammatical structure to a lot of what Coco was saying, and really a lot more random signings and a lot more less fluent of a language than what we would, you know, what was given out to the public as far as for what these primates could say. And that gives us a huge problem with when we study what early humans could be like, because we try to use other primates as like a reference source for us, but they don't seem to have the innate sources of grammar that we do as people do. So yeah, again, if you want to look more into this, definitely look up more about the Coco research and stuff, but also Noam Chomsky talks a lot about this. If you're familiar with Noam Chomsky has this idea about the genetic component of language, and tries to argue that certain structural rules are kind of like innate to human beings rather than you know, something else. So that there's a whole field out there, whole disciplines that talk about this stuff. But yes, everything you know about Coco is a lie, and I'm just gonna lay that down and let everybody else figure that out. So go look into that.
That is the hill Dan will die.
Yes, I'm gonna start fights tonight, but you know, it is what it is. So Matthew, that was a lot of information. But did you have anything else you want to say to that?
No, that's great. That was perfect. I will do some research and dig into it deeper. Thanks for the chat.
Sounds good, Matthew. Thanks for calling in, and appreciate the conversation there. Didn't think I was going to get on a soapbox tonight, but it had to be said. Okay, had to be said. A lot of crazy stuff going on there. Cynthia, you doing all right tonight?
No, I'm good. I have my water. You know,
that's good.
That was the first call. You know,
first call.
Great. I didn't have like, you know, a meltdown. You know.
Not yet. Well, we got time. Don't worry about it. How about another caller?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk to Alex, calling in from New York. Alex, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan, how's it been?
It's getting good, Alex. Thanks for calling in again. Just hanging out with Cynthia, having a good time, dropping hot takes as usual, right?
All right. So I actually had an argument I wanted to bounce off with bounce off you guys. I wanted to see if we could. I want to bounce this hypothesis I've been working on.
Okay,
So
I'm ready for it.
Do you guys know the brain in the jar argument, or the brain in the jar?
I am unfortunately too familiar with the argument, but yes.
And I am not. If you want to refresh, is that okay?
Dan, do you want to refresh, or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, there's this idea in solipsism, right? Solipsism is this way of thinking in philosophy that we really can't demonstrate that anything is objectively real outside of the self, right? So, like, we only have our own senses at the end of the day. Even I think, therefore I am doesn't really cut it. So, like, you can't actually demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that we're all just brains in a vat, right? So that's this kind of brain in a jar thing you're talking about, right, Alex?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I think I figured out a way to think about that in a way to actually make sense of it.
Okay.
So I think we need to start with a little bit of definition.
All right.
Which I think we can both agree is a thing that contains other things, or a different thing.
I'm scared, but okay. Yes, I'll accept that much from you.
And can we agree that you and everything else that you know about yourself is like spirituality, knowledge, memories, personality, is all based on the brain?
Mostly, I mean, we do have neurons that go down even into our gastrointestinal areas, right? So, like, the part of me that makes me is also the whole body, not just the brain. I think we kind of simplify the brain too much in a lot of these conversations, but it's mostly the brain. I'm willing to say it's mostly the brain.
Okay. So the argument would be the body is basically a jar. So we are technically just a brain in a jar.
Okay. I see what you're doing here, Alex. I see what you're doing here. I mean, if the point of these arguments, though, when we're talking about the philosophy of it, right, is we can't prove that there isn't an illusion that we're a brain in a jar, right? So, like, we're trying to get past the illusion part. Like, that hypothesis of us being a brain in a literal jar, or you using, like, jar loosely as a way to describe the body, like, that's not really what the hard problem of solipsism, which is what that's called, is talking about. It's more just trying to get around whether or not we're in a matrix.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get that hypothesis. That was my entire hypothesis of just that argument. I just wanted to bounce off of you guys, see if it needed more work, or if I should do some more research to get the argument a little bit better.
Maybe, Cynthia, you could tell me. What was the hypothesis there? I don't know what was the thing that could be tested, or
Alex, I did have a question just to clarify this for me.
Sure.
Are you saying, because I don't want to put words into your mouth, are you saying that we are basically our brains, and that our body, the body that contains the brain, is like comparative to a jar, or is the jar or the container that is a jar?
Yep.
Okay. Huh.
That is basically what I am saying.
Okay. So the only issue that I have with that, and pardon me, people, I am not a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher. I'm more of a sensory person. I can touch it, I can see it, I can smell it, etc., etc.
Mhm.
So the only problem that I have with that is that there's way more going on in our body than just a brain in the body, right? I mean, we have a bunch of organs that are working in order for us to function as a human. We have hearts that is pumping blood in and out. We have lungs that is taking in oxygen and taking and pushing out carbon dioxide. We have blood vessels, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things are working in order for us to, be able to say what we consider alive. When they stop working, including the brain, that's it. We're done, right? It's time to go ahead and put us in the ground or burn us or put us in a tree pod. But Jack killed that for me. If you all watched Nonprofits last week, you'll know why. Anyway, so I almost feel like that it. I'm assuming that you're just trying to put this in its most simplest form.
More work.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it needs more work. I just wanted to get the general basis of this argument. That way I can move on to my next part, which would be more research, how to link it together a little bit better. You know what I'm saying?
I would be interesting how you link.
Yeah, link together with what?
Link together as in, sorry, my brain kind of just said a word there.
That's okay. You clean your jar out. That might help.
Yeah.
Like how your co-host said, the other organs, I would have to work with those and, analogize those with the jar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It needs more work is what I'm saying. It definitely needs more work, but I'm just trying to get, the two initial statements down and the conclusion down. That way I could add more statements to make it more sound. The argument.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused. I still don't know what the argument really is. Are you trying to make a literal case that we're brains in jars?
Basically.
Okay. For what purpose does that?
Jar, this was just to be an idea. This was literally just a philosophy test for myself to see if I can rationalize this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you play with the definitions of words enough, you can say I'm literally anything, right? Like, I guess, to me, this doesn't seem like a, maybe I'm not you, Alex, but to me, that seems like less of a worthy pursuit, because I could also use the metaphor and say I'm a brain in a cup or a brain in a refrigerator, and it seems like semantically I'd be saying kind of the same thing you are. And there's just not a whole lot that I would get out of that.
Yeah, no, it's not a whole lot. That's why I need to work on it more.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope we helped you then, Alex. I guess good.
Down and get opinions. That way I could get a little bit more of a lead. You know what I'm saying? To know where I need to go from here.
Yeah, I just don't know where you're going. That's my thing. I can't help you to get where you're going because I don't know. I don't know where the end destination is. You know what I'm saying? This is. I'm trying. I'm sorry, Alex. I hope I'm being helpful to you here.
It definitely does. It gets me to the next step, which would be my next premise. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess good luck to you, Alex. Thanks for calling.
Good luck with that, Alex.
Yeah.
I wish you well on your linking journey.
Yes, me too. Happy trails, Alex.
Have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. We'll see you next time. Okay, that didn't go where I thought we was going to go. I thought he was talking about the hard problem of solipsism, which is literally just this idea of how do we prove we're not in a matrix? Because every other time I've heard somebody say we're all brains in a vat or brains in jars or whatever, that's where we're going. But he surprised me by saying his argument was we're literally just brains in jars. So I didn't know what to do with that. So that's cool. This is man. Well, with that out of the way, I think this is a good time for a promo. So maybe we should do the promo for all of our other shows here. We're going to play it for you guys live now. Check it out.
Which I didn't actually mention this to you earlier, Puck, but this is kind of interesting because they are monogamous until the opportunity strikes to not be monogamous.
If this is really what people want to see, and if this is what people really engage with, why am I trying to be all prim and proper? Drink my mug of orange soda with my pinky up, right?
It's basically bikini bottoms. I'm not gonna go in full details with the measurement. Basically, it's booty shorts with your cheeks out.
John is making a crazy face there with that ukulele. I am worried about his well-being, but I'm sure he's fine.
For the 19th time in a row, yes, I know that I'm leading people away from God. I've been doing it for a long time. I love leading people away from a God that nobody has demonstrated exists.
All right. Great promos, right, Cynthia?
I agree. And I was about to say, so how do you really feel, Matt? I can't tell.
I know. A lot of energy in there. I love it. Indeed. All right, let's get to another caller here. I want to talk to William. William, who is calling in from Arkansas. William, what's up?
Oh, it's supposed to be Alaska.
Alaska. Oh, you're right. It's AK. I never get calls from Alaska. Wow. See, I'm already notoriously bad with the state codes thing, but Alaska, that's like a new one for me. So thank you for correcting me.
Oh yeah, no problems. So I want to talk about the big lie, but I also liked the idea of a brain in the jar from the last caller. And if we ever get to the point where technology can upload our consciousness, hey, sign me up.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing with the mind-body problem stuff. We've talked about that on the show too, but I'm not an expert on that. So that's going to be, and to be honest, I don't think anybody knows the real answer to that yet. So we'll figure it out when it happens, I guess.
And my furthest expertise are shows about it on Star Trek.
Yeah, there you go. So the big lie, William, what? Yeah, go talk about that for me. What is that? What do you mean?
Yeah, it seems so weird, and I don't understand. Okay, so people are being lied to about elections and all that, and I know you can't endorse and talk about who should be with what as far as voting and all that, but when faced with the mountains of evidence, they're like, hey, let's just follow this pillow guy. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to say about this. People really don't want to be wrong, and they want to hear the people that they think feel the same way they do spoken out in in political avatars, right? Like that's part of the appeal to Trump's campaign was he was supposed to say the quiet parts out loud, right? He was kind of the person who was saying what a lot of people wouldn't never say in public, but he was saying live on TV every day. And that unfortunately has a draw for people. And Mike Lindell is in that same boat because he is also in that same group of people that's still hanging on to these election conspiracies, that's still hanging on to just a lot of these bogus ideas. And he is wild enough to go through with it. And so that kind of confidence is also really appealing to people because con men are confidence men. That's what the shortened phrase for con men is. They are people who are so confident in the BS that they're selling that you just kind of want to believe them. And Mike is totally an example of that. So yeah, I didn't think we'd be living in a world where the My Pillow guy is destroying the democracy of the United States. But again, it's 2021. It's anything's possible. Anything's possible at this point.
Anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be living in a world where conspiracy theories are treated, in kind of like the higher echelons within, well, for lack of a better term, news organizations. Mm-hmm. You used to relegate those to, Discovery Channel when
Right.
ratings were down. And all that,
Yeah.
it's like, no, it's got to be the aliens or some really stupid garbage.
Right.
But I mean, how do we get there? How do we just poison minds so readily? I mean, is it really just a matter of the technology was set up in at the right time in the right place, or have we always really been there, and this is just kind of like we just chipped away at the woodwork?
So Neil Postman talks a little bit about this in this book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, right? And so you could look at the history of mass communication and specifically mass media all the way back to the invention of the printing press to now, and you start to see a change in mainstream American opinions and attitudes about the media and its representations of what it should function as and what it actually functions as time has gone on. So like pretty much ever since public debates on television between, you can look back to JFK and Nixon, and you start to see that public debate was one of the instrumental forces in the turning of that election. Like that's just the starting point of what would continue to be a habit of television portrayals of people actually influencing what people had to say. Before that, it was usually recorded speeches or newspapers that people were talking about. So you start to enter into the television era, and then eventually you get into a 24-hour news cycle. You have to remember that news used to just be during like daytime hours. It wasn't always a 24/7 thing. Now we have a 24/7 news cycle, and now we have people who are trying to condense their political messages into smaller and smaller sound bites until eventually we get to where we are now, where every single part of the web is now incentivized to have shorter and shorter and shorter content. Look at YouTube right now. YouTube, they have their shorts going on. TikTok is one of the most prominent internet platforms out there, and it's a 60-second platform that you get to talk about. So it's like, this is the result of we have a media diet that can be filled with all kinds of stuff, and it can come from all kinds of places. The other thing too is that news used to be controlled by a smaller group of people who had the resources to actually publish and get reach across out there. Now, Mike Lindell of the Pillow Company can talk to anybody in the country right now through their smartphones, and that wasn't a thing you could do like 50 years ago. So if you don't have a training in media literacy, if you don't have the right tools to recognize how news actually gets their sources, what that news cycle looks like, what that process looks like for gathering information and researching, then you're going to be totally lost as to who to trust and to what to recognize as good reporting and bad reporting. If your news is just coming from whatever's on your Facebook feed and you don't have a good process of delineating where those sources are coming from, then of course you're going to be skeptical. Of course you're going to be saying, well, I'm hearing people say this and people say that, because you don't have any way of recognizing what's coming from where. So I don't know, that was kind of a longer tangent, but there's a lot going into this. And that's a summary of why I think it's happening, I guess. Cynthia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I want to use a little bit of an antidote. Anecdote. Anecdote. Yes, I want to use a little bit of an anecdote.
Okay.
I remember.
I would like a conversation anecdote as well. That would be nice.
We could do that next time. But one of the things that I remember, especially like coming into YouTube, because like I've done other YouTube shows and talked a lot, especially about politics and how politics affects different groups. And one of the things that I remember having to push back on with other people when they wanted to tell myself and my partner about who should be on our show, who should not be on our show, who should we talk to, who should we not talk to. And one of the last things that was said when we were talking to a friend of ours about this is that he said, well, we want to make sure that we control voices because we want to create our own echo chamber. And that's when my partner and I was like, ooh. And I think that, we have communities human beings, like we create communities, and oftentimes the communities are with people who are mostly look like us, think like us, talk like us. And so we happen to kind of like gather around information that kind of like tickles our fancy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that it's like natural, but it still can be dangerous. And the reason being is that I know for me myself that I have no problem with civil discourse. And I also want to believe as many true things as possible and not believe the things that are not true. So I am a person that I will turn on a dime if you give me proper evidence on why I should not, believe in such thing, right? But that's not the whole of society.
Right.
Right. And the thing about it is that, like, as you mentioned, Dan, like, propaganda has been utilized forever since we had any type of media source.
Right.
You think about even like Hitler, he used propaganda in order for him to be able to galvanize Germany around the Nazis and their philosophies and why they did the things that they did,
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like but the thing about it is that even like when you were mentioning about like how can you tell when a source is trusted or not, right? A lot of people don't know how to tell when sources can be trusted or not. Even like I remember like having back and forths with people who have a tendency to believe in conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And my main question to them is, well, how do you know that's true? And and then the answer to me is, well, you do your own research. And I'm like, no. If you're making this claim that this is what it is, then you should be able to back up what you just said. And unfortunately, we do have on the internet specifically a bunch of different corners where people can just vomit anything and anything at any time. And as long as they, make it seem as plausible as possible, people will believe it. And that's where we are.
Yeah. Look at the Plandemic documentary, right? Like you have this slick Netflix style documentary that went around Facebook and went around people's sources of information. And what did that do? That set us way, way back in terms of having trust for this vaccine. How many people today in this country are not getting vaccines because of that documentary? Got to be in the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, right?
Yeah.
Has to be.
And if it's even one, it's too many.
Yeah, exactly. And that documentary had no right to exist. Right to exist. But we don't have laws in our country that are saying, well, you can't publish this because that's not true. Right. That's not a thing that we have. And I would say for good reason in most cases, right? Like we've seen a history of other countries trying to censor the public and censor media in doing a lot of shady stuff. But unfortunately, that also means that it's up to us in some ways to really counter the information that we see. So I'm with you, Cynthia. Whenever I am encountering that, I try to counter it as best as I can. But I also recognize that that's a privileged position that I have because I'm like knowledgeable enough to be able to actually do the good research on it and to be able to talk with people about it and have the free time to even talk about it, even on shows like this one. So that's tough. And it shouldn't be up to guys like me or you or just the average person to be the forefront of countering what we're seeing today. But unfortunately, a lot of campaigns against trying to educate people against what the truth is just really aren't working or aren't working as much as people have hoped because it's just piling more. When we start to see companies like Google and companies like Facebook and Twitter that are marking things about COVID-19 saying, hey, this is questionable information, that is only making people even more skeptical.
That's right.
Because they're seeing that, oh, an algorithm is taking care of this. They're censoring us. There's something going on here. There's something more nefarious. So there's like this compound effect here going on that's very complex. And I think that the sad thing is, I don't know if anybody has a good answer on how to solve it. I've looked at a lot of papers on this, or at least I've tried looking at stuff. I've tried seeing like what the top writers in the New Yorker and other, journalists have said about this. And I don't know if anybody has the best idea outside of one-on-one conversations, but it's scary. It's scary.
That's one of the things, because like Cynthia was saying, trying to set up your own echo chamber, and that's bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
And so, how do you find a way to chip away at somebody else's echo chamber, not so that you can sway them, but so that they can then go look for reputable sources. I know that, shows like this attempt to do that, but it's hard to do that with a, 10, 15 or 20-minute call.
Right.
One more thing I would like to say too, that, those of us who happen to be non-believers also need to be better at having one-on-one conversations. I think that I've read a lot of different articles about the new atheist, and these are people who, once they actually come to their disbelief, because, and oftentimes it comes through reasoning, right? But at the same time, once they actually have these arguments down pat on why stuff is not right or wrong, or why you are wrong, it's more of a, okay, I'm about to turn you around with my my particular phrases, and I'm about to slam dunk you and tell you how wrong you are, and point me, boom, I got it, right? But it's not but that becomes disingenuous, because even on that online, you're not really trying to engage a person so that you can have a proper conversation and really start to examine some of the claims that they make. You're just like, this is wrong because of this is wrong because of this, and now you need to get out of my face, bye. So and that's why, and I understand that even times that, people go through their angry atheist phase, like, everybody lied to me. But at the same time, okay, once you get through that, we have to learn how to have better conversations with people.
Yes, absolutely. And computer mediated communication, right? Which is talking about comment sections, talking about any kind of text interface on the internet, is proven to be the least effective communications in these kinds of conversations, right? There's documentation on that. There's definitely evidence that shows that one-to-one conversations with people tend to have more of an effect on people than those other forms of communications with the average person, right? Because you're able to get signals in communication there with other people that you just can't pick up on text. It also, when you're putting out an argument, you're really thinking about how you want to respond back, and less exactly about what the person is saying at the time too. Your defenses go way, way up when you see a whole block of text of somebody who's ready to fire back at you, rather than let a conversation go its natural course with somebody. So unfortunately, I think it does mean that we have to let go of our own assumptions and let go of our own sense of what we think is right sometimes when we do have our conversations, and just ask other people what they believe and why. I mean, really following a street epistemology approach and not letting our own biases get in the way, and letting people figure that out for themselves. I know it worked for me, right? Obviously, I am an anecdote to that story, but I didn't have a good epistemology on how to figure out what's true and what's not true. When I had my conversation with Anthony Magdabaska, I was 19. I was still trying to figure out life. And if I had come in today with the same mindset I had then, I probably would have been a very different person now, because I was working on a methodology that was culturally brought up into me through my church and through my community, and not through secular values. The things that, Cynthia, you were talking about this earlier. You're someone who values you want to know what's true, right? Above everything else, right? You want to know what's true, and you want to try to figure it out at all costs. But that's not a value that other people have all the time. And if people don't have that value, then it doesn't matter how many facts you spew at them, because their epistemic worldview there isn't going to account for that as much. They may account for anecdote more as valuable to their experiences, or they may trust the people in their personal circle more, or the people they see on TV that they like more. So it's a complex issue. But at the end of the day, I am still an advocate for having personal conversations with people as being some of the best things you can do in changing people's minds, if that's your goal.
I second that emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people suck.
People do suck, William.
Yeah.
People do suck.
Yeah.
But people's all we got.
Yeah. And remember, guess what, William?
You're
Guess
right.
what, William? Guess what? We are people.
We people.
We people.
That's right. William, if you had met me 7 years ago, you would have thought I was probably the most annoying person ever. You would have probably disagreed with everything I had to say on the things that really mattered. But the fact that people were patient with me changed who I am today, right? And that's important. I think it's important to give other people that chance too, even if they're being really annoying about the thing they're talking about at the time. Because I know I was super wrong. And if you look at the comment section on when people talk with me, they weren't super nice about it either. But, it does take time. You have to be willing to give patience to other people that you'd be willing to give to yourself. But I don't know, William. I don't know if there's anything else we can help you on. Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to work on my street epistemology, myself, but it's hard.
I would say one thing that I really wish that was in schools now that could possibly help a lot of this that we're in right now is to teach reasoning and critical thinking skills to children. I would so love that, because if we start them out young, where we can teach them how to question things, how to look for sources for things, really help them in that particular aspect, then possibly when they get older, that, we're not going to be subjected to, what did I call him earlier, Dan? When you call him the pillow Mongol.
The mogul?
Yeah,
he's supposed to be mogul. I did say Mongol, but
and you said Mongol, and I called him Pillow Khan or or Genghis Pillow. Genghis
Genghis Lindell.
Right, Genghis Lindell. But like if we had more relevant, curriculum that can really help, teach children critical thinking skills and reasoning, and they can actually take that into their adulthood, we will probably have less Michael Lindells.
This isn't a pushback, Cynthia, because I 100% agree with you. This is an addendum to your statement, okay? Because when critical thinking means so many different things to different people,
True.
You don't see this as much today, but like there are textbooks that used to be published in the early 2000s of stickers on the front of science textbooks saying this book teaches evolution and you should be critical and skeptical of everything that it talks about in this book, right? Like you see versions of that in Texas and in other places, right? So like critical thinking or being critical can also have cultural connotations to it too, that you want to make sure, because what's critical to an evangelical is being critical of the secular world, being critical of what Hollywood tells you, being critical of what evolution says, right? So like being critical is not a neutral thing sometimes it does have these connotations to it. So like we have to be like, and I know this is what you meant, I know like this is what you're talking about, but we have to be extra careful that when we're saying we want to teach critical thinking, we mean back to the roots, baby. We're talking Aristotle, Socrates, other and not just Western philosophy too. By the way,
even though I personally I do not like Aristotle, I really don't like that.
That's reasonable. That's reasonable. He had a lot of crazy things to say. But,
yes, he did. Yes, he did. But but I understand what you're saying. And definitely. We don't necessarily want to make something like that so broad that people can kind of like misconstrued what critical in itself can be. Remember, we even have like this whole pushback about critical race theory just because of one dude.
I know. Oh my
just
God.
because of one guy.
I know.
Thank you. Fox News and Christopher Loco.
That's really weird. This side note, but critical race theory has been around for a while, and for some reason, it's absolutely blown up in the last year or two. I mean, obviously, I know why, but like, it's really just interesting. But yeah, what I'm thinking too is like the rising conspiracy party in this United States are the people who are saying, well, you guys need to be critical. You know what I mean? Like they're the ones who are saying you guys have had to be skeptical. And like, we don't even know what being skeptical means as a consensus in this country anymore.
That's true.
Which is wild. But yeah, you're right. People are afraid of critical race theory and other stuff. Yeah.
Indeed.
But anyway, William, that's a great call. Thanks for getting us on these tangents. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, that pretty much clears everything up. Well, I mean, as much as it can be considering.
Yeah, for sure.
But thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you, William. Appreciate you calling in, and hope you have a good rest of your night. Yeah, I love it when people call about things I can't sufficiently answer to my own, to my own standards. Right? Isn't it frustrating?
Yeah, but it challenges your brain. That's not just in a jar.
Right, or it is a jar, depending on who you ask.
Well,
but
if you call it a container,
a
could it be
container,
better than a container instead of
possibly. I think so, but we should probably move on to a next call here.
Let's
I
do
think.
it.
I want to talk to Joe, who is calling in from Virginia. Joe, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. How can we help?
I think we've talked 3 or 4 times. You remember me?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah. So how can I help you today?
And so well, so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious. Why are you an atheist activist?
Yeah, it's a good question. To be an atheist activist, I mean, I think that's fair to say that. It's not what I would prefer. I would prefer, I'm like Cynthia, right? I would prefer that I'm a critical thinking advocate, right? Or I would prefer that I'm a skeptic advocate, because atheism can mean different. I'm
kind of using your own words. I just watched a video where you called yourself an atheist.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair. I just think that what I advocate for is more than just the atheist position, right? I just want to make that clear for people because, arguably, depending on who you ask, I'm not even a real atheist. I've used different terms for myself. I've used atheist before, but I am the most clear I can give to people is I'm an ex-Christian. That's the most meaningful label to me that I like now. And obviously, I'm doing volunteer work for the atheist community of Austin. So yeah, it's fair to call me an atheist activist in that sense, I guess. But it's not the same kind of activism I would say it is for other kinds of activism. But I guess, okay, to answer your question, right? Why do I do this? Okay, so this stuff is important to me, man. If I heard about the stuff that I talk about every week on this show when I was a kid, I'd be a completely different person a lot sooner. And this stuff that we talk about as atheists, the stuff when it comes to the Bible, when it talks about Christian politics, when we're talking about the history of the world that was denied to people of other races and sexual orientations because of a religious hegemony that has been going on for eons. That's really important. And I think more people should know about it and more people shouldn't be afraid to have these conversations. And also be able to look at other atheists as people too, not just evil people who just want to have sex outside of marriage and go to hell and be separate from God, right? I think
spirit cook.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of reasons why, Joe. There's a lot of reasons why.
Okay. Yeah, I know. What I've noticed is a lot of people. See, I come from a very secular background. I grew up in an extremely secular household and environment, and never thought about God or so. But I see a lot of times people who come from these very religious backgrounds go on to become the more extreme atheists. And like me, I've changed. I've gone the other way. You went that way, and I went the other way. So I came to believe actually that God does exist through the argument and evidence. And
may I ask a question, Joe? May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Could you please tell me exactly what an extreme atheist is?
Oh, I consider people who spend their life, when you become atheist and you spend your whole life talking about God, people, mostly I consider this whole atheist movement online kind of more militant atheist type people. And so,
I don't know. Joe, I talk about atheism the exact number of times the average Christian talks about God, because the average Christian goes to church once a week on Sunday, and I have a show that happens once a week on Friday nights. So I don't know if that makes the average Christian an extreme Christian, but that's standard. I don't know.
Do you spend the rest of your days debating God or no?
To be honest, I'm taking a sabbatical off the internet outside of this show right now. Life's just crazy. But I mean, I do talk about it outside of Friday nights once a week. Yeah, for sure, but not every week. I mean, I'm just like the average Christian in that sense. You know, the average Christian isn't having a conversation about God every day of their lives, but if they're going to church every Sunday and they're meeting in community with their other Christians, then yeah, I mean, I think there's a comparison.
And to add on to that, I know I cannot speak for every atheist because I am not every atheist, but I know for myself that being an atheist is just one part of my life.
Right.
It is not my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and even the only time that I would get into a so-called debate is if I am personally challenged by atheists about why me being an atheist is wrong. I remember I recently went on a road trip, and I was talking to a person who told me that they're not necessarily religious, but they believe in God. And then I said, well, who is God? And she said the universe. And then I turned to another person who was a Christian. I said, who is God? And I got a completely different answer. And I said, see, both of you all said that you believe in God, but you can't even agree on who God is. Okay. So my pushback is that if you are a person that is trying to convince me, and this is oftentimes what I observe on the other side of the aisle, and I know that because Dan, also, I am an ex-Christian. I've been a Christian way longer in my life than I was an atheist. And I even was a minister. I studied to be a minister. So I did that street, evangelizing. Right. And oftentimes what ends up happening is that you will get way more proselytization from those who are believers on to people who don't believe. And then oftentimes you have to come up with these counters to just substantiate your position as a non-believer. And so like, it may sometimes be perception about being extreme per se from, those who may believe, only because like, and then oftentimes it's because like you are way more outspoken about it. Like, it's kind of like, I remember I was talking to another person on another show, and oftentimes I talk a lot about racism. And I was told by a person that the only reason that racism is existing because people keep talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's exactly what it's not. Right. Yeah. And the thing about it is that I said, no, we talk about it because it does exist. And then you need to shine the light on it because we need to figure out as a community how to dismantle it because it hurts people, and if I switch back to this whole conversation about, a perceived extreme atheist, if we talk about our non-belief, because there was a time in different areas that if you were a out non-believer, that you could lose your life. Yeah. And there's still places in this world where if you are an out atheist, that you can, because like that particular country happens to be ruled by a more religious sect, then again, you can lose your life. So most of the times, like, when you have like what Dan existing and myself and others that are come on shows like this with the ACA, it's more so like, no, it's not necessarily that we're extreme. It's just that we are very much so vocal about our position, and it should be to the point where if we are in a country where we say that we have freedom of speech and freedom of religion and et cetera, we should be able to have, be able to do that without somebody else actually, constantly beating us down and telling us that we're wrong. Right.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I think you should do whatever you want. I have no problem with. You have every right to, join ACA, talk about whatever you want. That's fine. I just think, for me personally, that's just how I view. I think for me, if you're just an atheist and that's all you are, you should just be like, I don't believe in God, and then just never talk about it again. But what I see is atheists just spend their whole life talking about God, which to me comes across more as anti-theism, where they have such a negative view of religion and I guess maybe their experience and whatever, and just
because religion's never hurt anybody, right, Joe? It's been It's not worth talking about. No, I'm being unnecessarily sarcastic, right? So, but like the privilege of being in a Christian majority country makes it seem like that when a minority group is speaking out, that it seems like it's extreme. But the truth is, Christianity in whole, and I'm not talking about you specifically, Joe, but the history of Christianity is filled with violence and is filled with people trying to radicalize others in the name of their faith and colonizing others in the name of their faith. And the world that we live in now is the result of that. So, like you may have come to Christianity yourself, but most people in this country were born into it. And the reason why they were born into it is because their parents were born into it. And they were born into it because either they were conquered by a Christian group of people, or they were under the control of a Christian part of the world, whether, if you go back far enough, the Catholic Church, or other countries that ruled with that lack of separation between church and state. Right?
A perfect example. U.S. chattel slavery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like it seems extreme because we're like the minority group, and it's kind of weird because not everybody talks about it. We talk about it, but it's also because it matters a lot to us, and we have to face more as atheists every day than the average Christian does in their belief, because being a Christian in the US, that's just normal. Nobody bats an eyelash when you say you believe in Jesus. If I came up to my workplace tomorrow and said, I believe that 2,000 years ago, a man rose from the dead and healed a bunch of people and went to heaven after he died, that's just Tuesday in the United States. That's just every day here. But if I say, yeah, I actually don't think that's true, people will like not talk to me because of that. Like that's a big social barrier for some people.
And,
so it's
even to add on to that, I'm African American and an atheist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, because like I have been told, like, how are you Black and an atheist? I'm like, because I happen to be Black and don't believe in God. Yeah, full stop. But no, but like even the Pew Research has put out a survey that 79% of African Americans identify as Christian.
Yeah.
In the United States. I mean, that's a lot of people. Right. And you know what the percentage was for a Black atheist? Anybody? I'll tell you, less than 1%.
Yeah.
Less than 1%. So like, yeah, of course, like, because like oftentimes, like, as you just said, Dan, we are a minority, and I'm a minority within a minority of being of this particular mind. And oftentimes can be to the point where I'm kind of shunned because, because I'm part of a group that is so religious, Right. Thank goodness that the particular denomination that I grew up in was like one of those mainline ones. Specifically, I grew up Episcopal, and I went to Catholic school, but that's neither here nor there. So they didn't have like this really hard line ideology when it came to Christianity. But if I happened to have gone to like more of a more Black, Southern, charismatic, evangelical type of church, curtains, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have friends that, I have gone to church with in the past that know that I'm an atheist now. And I'm not talking to her. She's been captured by Satan, and I mean, and that's the thing. And I'm just like, damn, like just because I'm still the same person, but that's the type of stuff that we face. And I'm just like, why? I personally have a wish that people can just be people without having to have pushback for being who they are.
Yeah.
That's my personal wish. I know that that's pretty ideological, but that's where I'm at. So.
Joe, you still with us?
Yeah, I mean, you guys kept talking, so I've been just listening. Yeah, just I understand your views and everything, and I'm not a religious person. I just happen to believe, I don't go to church or anything. I just happen to believe, I did a lot of research and stuff on it, and came to a different conclusion than you. Did you have a bad you seem like, I mean, I saw your old videos with Anthony Magnavosco, and you seem like a real nice guy. Did you have a bad experience growing up with church, or?
Does it matter if I had a bad experience?
Doesn't matter to me. I'm just wondering.
Well, it's just interesting that that's something that you'd ask, right? Because if I said that if you were a Christian, right, and I asked you, oh, are you a Christian because you had a bad experience with atheism growing up? Like, that's just not usually like a thing that comes up, right? But it is a stereotype that people who, are non-religious tend to face. But no, my Christian upbringing was, for the most part, great. It's pretty awesome. What I realized, though, was that me being a part of the larger systems, right, the larger Christian hegemony, was actually bringing other people down in ways that were unconscious, is what I realized, right? So, like, I was, I was not pro-LGBT when I was a Christian, right? I had lots of prejudices against LGBT people, and that came from my Christian upbringing, straight up. That came from the people around me. And even though I wasn't an active contributor in the sense that I wasn't protesting, I wasn't like posting mean comments online, my attitudes and the way that I navigated myself in the world was because of my Christian upbringing, 100%. So, those are the kinds of things that I'm interested in talking about with other people when I talk about Christianity, alongside the like factual truth of whether or not a guy rose from the dead 2,000 years ago, right? Like, that's also important, because I think people should know that. But like, I am genuinely interested in how these beliefs relate to other beliefs and shape the way that we interact in the world. Because if it was just a matter of, yes, I believe a singular historical event happened, or that there was a creator God, then I don't think Cynthia and I would be here, because, who cares, right? But it's not just about that. It's more than that. There's a network of beliefs happening here that are related to that. And that's really what we try to talk about more. I feel like, at least that's what I'm more interested in. I don't know about you, Cynthia.
I cannot help but to go back to this whole question when you just asked Joe to Dan if he had a bad experience growing up in church. It almost reminded me of people saying that folks turn out to be LGBTQIA plus because they were they were touched incorrectly as children.
Right.
Right. So like some type of trauma had to happen to them in order for them to be this,
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me personally, there was no trauma,
Right.
There was a lot of things that happened when I was in church that I did not agree with, that came across the pulpit, but no one I know personally abused me.
Right.
I came to my conclusions through, I just didn't have a good reason to believe in God.
Right.
And, and depending on what atheists that you speak with, because like I've known people who actually grew up in cults and who have been abused,
Right.
but they still have some type of faith measure and they do believe in God. Some of them even contribute their being able to get out of a cult because of their belief in God.
Right.
So it's not always about a trauma thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even back to myself, like I said, I just reasoned my way out of it. Like when I thought about if I had unequivocal proof that said deity that was the creator of the universe existed, I did not. And then when you happen to go to all of these other theologians who happen to be way smarter than I, come up with their arguments about and call it evidence for the existence of God, they fall short. Because like, here's the thing. If I were to say, I have a mother, if I say I have a mother and you say, well, prove you have a mother, I can pull out my birth certificate with her name on it. I can call her on the phone. You can come to my house right now. You can meet her. You know what I'm saying? So I can actually demonstrate that my mother exists. But those particular methodologies we can't use with God at all.
Right.
You know, and even like when I had like this whole back and forth with this other lady who was trying to proselytize to me, I just had to stop her. I said, "You can't prove God exists." And then she said, "Yes, I can." I was like, "No, you can't. Nobody can." And she said, "Well, prove God doesn't exist." I said, "I can't." So we won't stop this conversation right now.
Right. And I also too like, and I want to let Joe talk here too, but like the fact that people have traumatic experiences in their churches, and that's what people ask, like, what does that say about the churches that is such a common enough thing, right? That has to be an attribute for people. Like really, like now it's used as an argument to say, oh, well, this is why you are the way they are, because this group of people was bad towards you. Like, yes, I think that's valid for most people, actually. Like if I was part of Scientology and the Scientologists abused me, I think that's a good reason to go against Scientology, right? But you know, I don't know. That already gets lost on some people, it seems like.
Yeah, it does. Oh well.
Anyway, Joe, we're oh man, it looks like our call actually dropped here. Maybe he got tired of us talking, but look, like when you're asking us questions like, what was it trauma the reason why? No, I've talked about this. You can look at my videos before. I didn't have the same thing as you, Cynthia. I didn't have any reason to believe anymore. The more that I thought about the reasons why I believed, and I found that the reasons why I did believe were not good reasons upon further examinations. Why didn't I think about that before? Because nobody questioned me about it. Nobody was willing to talk to me about it. I grew up I did youth group my whole life. I was a part of a college evangelical ministry. I did summer camps and stuff. I mean, that was my life. Who was going to challenge me in that environment to a degree that's significant enough to change my worldview? Most people just don't. I wasn't exposed to that. But the more I got exposed to outside opinions, the more I developed my own worldview. And that's why shows like this exist, so we can help other people develop their own worldview. Whether you become an atheist or something else, I just want you to find good reasons to believe in what you believe. And that's why I'm doing this. So
I totally agree. Talk about and especially like when you grow up in environments like that, those are echo chambers.
Right.
Nobody's
Exactly.
gonna challenge you on your belief.
I definitely grew up in an echo chamber. Yeah, for sure. And it may not be what most people think of as an echo chamber, but it really was. If you don't know how to get out of that chamber, like if you don't know what's even out there to even question the resources, then yeah, you're part of an echo chamber for sure. But anyway, we are closing up here because we got to close up here because we are at the end of the show here. We are not going to go away. We are going to go on the Atheist Community of Austin fan Discord server after this, so go check us out there if you're watching us live. But Cynthia, I want to give a special thanks to you for being my guest today on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Dan. This was so much fun.
I'm so glad you had fun. Where can people find you at?
I have a link tree.
Oh, a link tree.
I have a link tree. So my link tree is /camglamming. It has all of my links of where you can find me, videos, me talking about stuff. Again, also I am a regular on the nonprofits, and I will be on this show Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please make sure you like and subscribe to the nonprofits, and that way you will always get a notification when we go on and do our premieres. And so that's where you can find me. Yes.
Yep. Check out that nonprofits episode this Sunday right after Talk Heathen. You're not going to want to miss it.
Can I share the name of it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes, okay. This week's name is Woke Russian Jesus Juiced on Super Satan Serum. That's a
lot of words. That's a lot of words, Cynthia. I forgot that's what that title was, but yeah, that's I think that's what the title they're gonna put it on this week. So look out for that. Please. If you haven't already, put that on your calendar. And check out the nonprofits. Folks, this is Truth Wanted. We go live every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. So if you missed this episode, you can check it out next week, and you can find this show on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. There's a couple of different ways you can support the show. One of them is by being a member. You can click the join button below the video to do that. You get little cool emoticons with that. They are pretty cool. Another way to support it is through the Patreon. It's Patreon. There's the membership thing on the screen there. We got patreon.com/truthwanted as well, and you get a special patron of the week shout out if you do that. You can also get merch from our store. It's tiny.cc/ merch ACA. I almost said that link wrong. Oh my goodness, it's merch ACA. Definitely check that out. Get the hoodies, get the t-shirts. All of your Truth Wanted shopping needs can be taken care of. Once again, we're going to be on the ACA fan Discord server after this, so you should definitely check that out. You should like and go join the Truth Wanted Facebook fan group as well if you're interested in having conversations there. And you can email the show too. It's truth@atheist-community.com. So thank you guys who communicate on there and who are on the Facebook group. But I can never forget to thank the wonderful, spectacular, amazing, fantastic crew that helps make this show happen every single week. Look at that crew. That's a small crew today. This is the smallest I've seen in a while. Look at that crew though. A handsome crew we got going on here. This show is a part of the AEN podcast network. Shows like Nonprofits and Talk Heathen and other shows are on this network. So you should check out all the ones that do that. We also have a YouTube channel for the AEN podcast network that you should check out to see all of the different shows. Cynthia, do you have any words of wisdom to give us all before we close out tonight's show?
Oh, words of wisdom. Okay.
Words of wisdom.
Don't be funky. Get your vaccine. Wear your mask. Social distance. And be nice to people.
You had me at don't be funky. Honestly, everything else was great too, but I like that in particular. Don't be funky. Quote Cynthia McDonald. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you to everybody watching the show tonight. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.